Yes, so we're recording now, and this is welcome to everyone today at the Great Bones Book Club. And we are so fortunate to have Dr. Keith McCormick with us today from Massachusetts, joining us all the way by Zoom from his wooded area. Beautiful, beautiful place you live, Doctor. And I just wanted to mention that first of all, there's a group of us here personally attending, as well as those people who may watch this recording someday in the future or are watching it now. Hello, Deb. And I think there may be another person or two who will want to pop in with us as well. In any case, Dr. McCormick wrote a book that caught my attention early this year. Great book. The Great Bones book is an amazing piece of work. And what I know about you, Doctor, is that you were an Olympic athlete, and anyone who goes into that realm isn't just playing small. You dive in, you dig deep, and you keep going. And you did the same thing with this book. So the Great Bones book, I'll just hold it up here, was published in January of this year. I was looking for something because although I had overcome the edge of osteoporosis one time before with food only, there were some other things obviously going on 15 years later, and I find myself now not measuring up well with the DEXA, which is, of course, the bone density test. So I was looking and I found Dr. McCormick. And Dr. McCormick, I just want to say thank you for writing the book because it really is a great guide. We want more and more people to be aware. We want more and more of the medical community to be aware, to support us. And there are about 15 of us here today saying, yes, we need more knowledge. We need more assistance in this area because there's more than just doing drugs. In some cases, there may be, as you say, some reasons to do drugs. However, it's not the only thing, even if it is appropriate to use some of the drugs. And perhaps we can have you on another time to talk about some of the drugs. But I also do have a recording from you that we can tap into from your first visit here in April. So again, thank you and welcome. And I'd like to have you tell the group here just a little bit about your journey. And I want to know more specifics about what might be of help to these people to understand how you, in the depths of osteoporosis, found your hope and what kinds of things you did that you were able to get out of this and no longer fracture. And you haven't for many years. So I'll turn it over to you for a moment.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate being here. And as you are, I'm very passionate about the subject. And I feel like, yes, the way doctors and the whole medical community approaches osteoporosis is very superficial. And unfortunately, they miss a lot of the things that they should be looking at. So, and that is why I wrote the book. I'm hoping to, the book is a little long, it's 700 pages. To be honest, it could be 2,000 pages easily. But my son said, Dad, nobody will read that. So I brought it down to 700. But yeah, it's a complex disorder. And I want people to understand the complexity. And so as I was reading the couple of pages that you said we were going to go over today, I was thinking even just those 5 pages or 6 pages or 7 pages could be 100 pages easily. But my whole journey started when I was 45. I ended up having a lot of fractures. And so I went to endocrinologists and they just said, take drugs. And I said, there has to be more to it than that. And they essentially said, no, there's not. And I said, well, we're going to figure this out for myself. And so I just immersed myself. And as you said earlier, I attack everything in the same way, whether it's making the Olympic team or doing an Ironman or figuring out osteoporosis. I'm all in. I put everything into it that I have. So that's where my two books came from, is just, deep dive into the whole thing. So.
But yet you stand today And after slaying the dragon, you're doing Ironmans again, I hear.
Yep. Well, this year I only did 1/2 Ironman and
Oh.
one marathon, but that's only because I'm so busy now that it's really hard to do triathlons. So I've just decided I'm just going to do some marathons for a year or two, and we'll see if I do some tries again. But right now I only have time to run. So.
Okay. So I'm going to take us back out here for a moment and get the slides up. There we go. All right. Well, I'm not sure why it does that, but in any case, we'll just go with what we've got here. Therapeutic targets is what we're covering today. And so I wanted to immerse us in this section of the book that has to do with blood cells and tests for blood cells. Some of them are very common, but there's some things that we will learn here today that will help to unleash our knowledge and help us understand better what these mean. So when we get a blood test, we can look at it and say, oh, well, it looks like I'm going in the right direction, or I have some more questions, or boy, that looks concerning. So these are the things that we'll be looking at. Of course, I should have introduced myself. I'm Deb Martine, and I am a holistic health educator here at Lotus Blossom Clinic. And we are working on the Great Bones book, Taking Control of Your Osteoporosis. I wanted to just mention briefly that we went over this in great detail last month. So for anyone who has not seen that, I can send the PowerPoint presentation in a PDF form to you. So you're welcome to text or email me. My number is 303-929-4972, or email me to deb@lotusblossomclinic.com. One of the things that we've learned from reading your book, Dr. McCormick, is that the DEXA, which is the bone density scan, is not the end all. In fact, there are some problems with it in many cases. And the big one that pops out at me every time I think about this or speak to someone is 50% of people, and this I think was a study of women, but 50% of the women who had fractures and went to medical facilities for these fractures had not been diagnosed with osteoporosis. And I'm sure a number of them had DEXA scans. And the fact that there's many things that can be done incorrectly in a DEXA, and that arthritis can look like bone to the DEXA machine. So many of these women, 50% of these women, didn't know that they had the opportunity to fracture like that. They didn't know they were at risk. They thought they were golden because the DEXA said they were golden, and they weren't. So there's this other part called the trabecular bone score. It's software. And you just run it on top of the DEXA scan. And it's actually in a number of places across Florida, like 100 different places have bought the software. And we are in process of finding something, hopefully locally, that we can go to here that does it. But we're currently in the mystery of figuring out why did they have it, but they haven't put it in. And I think as we bring this group request from a bunch of prospective patients who would go to this place to get their DEXAs if they had the TBS score as well, we're hoping to make some inroads, and we would love to spread this around. So I've sent a copy of this to Dr. McCormick, and I'm sure you've had an opportunity to send it to a person or two. And anyone here in this room or listening to this, feel free to contact me here at Lotus Blossom Clinic, and I will send this to you. We even have the ability to gather the contact information for people who are interested. So the idea is that we gather this. I want to have 30 or 40 names when I go to my first place. And I want to march up to the marketing folks and say, hey, if you're looking for some new business, here we are, we're anxious, and we'd love to come to you. And you might even get some people who come here from other places because they hear about it. and they get to visit beaches when they're here. You know, it's good. So that's the DEXA.
I'm coming.
You're coming, all right.
I'll be there.
Yeah, we know where to help you be. Yeah. So in this session, we do have our special guest, Dr. McCormick, and we're looking into things in the CBC, the blood tests that everybody probably here gets every year or two. Probably most of us go every year for this. And we'll find out more about our white blood cell army and the immune system and the red blood cells that bring the stuff of life through our body. These are found in CBC tests. And if there's time, we may cover some of the CMP tests, which is complete. What is that again, doctor?
It's complete. A comprehensive metabolic profile.
Metabolic profile, right.
And 10 to 14 or so indices in there.
Okay. And in addition, we'll talk about various issues that I have some questions about with diets from this section that have effects on bone marrow and the bone remodeling process. And again, our material comes from Dr. Keith's book. So our aim is to periodically find out if we are on the right treatment protocol. Yes, this makes sense to do. And if not, to have the information with which our chosen practitioners can help us alter the course we're on for greater healing. Now, Dr. McCormick, you and I have had a consult over the phone, and you offer that service as well to people. If you cannot find someone here, I recommend you can contact Dr. McCormick directly, and he will want you to send him all kinds of information because he dives deep. So he wants the radiology graphics, not just the radiologist's write-up about what they saw, because he may see something different that was overlooked. Okay, and I see I need to admit somebody, so I'm going to admit somebody. There we go. I think that's going to do it. No, it didn't come back. Okay, I'll need to go back out in a minute and check on her. The bone testing wisdom with Dr. McCormick's section is really what we're here about today. So Dr. McCormick, I wanted you to just start diving into the CBC tests and the immune system. And what is it about white blood cell types that we need to understand in order to have a sense of how that impacts our bones, the relationship with those bones, and the importance of certain ratios in, you know, as a high level, but something that we can take in and utilize a level of that. So I'm going to put you hopefully back in the center screen now.
So you just said something that was really, really important, and that is that we're trying to figure out the effectiveness of treatment. And when you look at a bone density, you really can't see that for a long time, if ever, sometimes, because density doesn't change maybe, but quality changes. And a bone density is just looking at bone density. The quantity of bone is not looking at the quality, and bone strength is a combination 50-50 of density and quality. So you're right, Deb, you know, we need to figure out other ways to look and see whether what we're doing is effective or not. It's not just about guessing. It's really scientifically seeing what we're doing. And that is what you do with lab tests. As I said, for a bone density, you get them every 2 years. But with lab tests, you can get them every couple months and see changes. So I talk about therapeutic targets in the book. And a therapeutic target is when you find something, I don't care what it is, whether it's your fingernails being really soft or brittle, you know it's not correct to have that, you know it's not healthy to have that, or a blood test like the red blood cell count is really low, white blood cell count really high or low. Other markers, as you said, on the comprehensive metabolic profile, in there you have a serum calcium, glucose, liver enzymes. So all that, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of lab tests, and we don't do hundreds of lab tests on people, but there are so many lab tests out there that we can do that in some way, either directly or indirectly, are related to your bone health. And I always talk of your skeleton as being the center of your physiological universe. And when I say that, it's because your bones are related to every single other organ system in your body. So, we're going to talk specifically today about the CBC, the complete blood count, but I will get off on tangents because you can't just talk about a CBC and all the indices within that and not talk about other things. So the CBC has several different things. Has red blood cell count, white blood cell count, has the red blood cell distribution width, the size of cells, the how many platelets. There's lots of different indices within a CBC. So how do you want to approach this, Deb? Do you want to just pick? Do you have specific questions? Like I said, we can talk about the CBC for days probably, but we won't do that. So,
well, let's just talk about the ratios. I think. Well, first of all, no, let's talk about the specific kinds of immune cells and how those relate to the bone, the white blood cells.
So I think we have to back up one step and say inside bone, we have essentially, well, there's 3 types of stem cells. We're only going to talk about 2, the mesenchymal stem cells and the hematopoietic stem cells. So the mesenchymal stem cells give us osteoblasts and fat cells and some other cells too. The hematopoietic stem cells give us a lot of our white blood cells, red blood cells, and so it's the integrity of those 2 colonies of stem cells that is really has to do with the health of your whole body. And if you have systemic inflammation or any number of different things that can disrupt the ratio of the hematopoietic and mesenchymal stem cells, then you're going to disrupt the numbers of osteoclasts. Not only the number, but the action, the activity of osteoclasts and osteoblasts. And the osteoblasts are the cells that form bone. The osteoclasts are the cells that break down bone, and they have to be in balance. So when you get a little microfracture, the osteoclasts come in, eat out that little microfracture. There's a little pit there, and now the osteoblasts have to come in and fill it in. Well, if, for example, on your CBC, you see a really low red blood cell count, often that is because not always. You can't always say, oh, low red blood cell count of 4.0 to 3.9, 3.8. It's always because of this, but it can be. So that's the thing with indices, with lab tests and bone densities. You can't just look at one thing and make a decision. You have to look at a whole bunch of different things and put it together as a story. It's like a storyline. And the red blood cell count, if it's really low, it can be because your bone marrow is filling up with fat. And that fat is toxic to osteoblasts. So your osteoblast, as I said, forms the red blood cells, forms the bone. And if you have this buildup of fat, it releases palmitic acid that is poisonous to the osteoblast, and you don't have very much osteoblastic activity. If you have an increase in a disruption of the white blood cell levels, so there's lymphocytes and neutrophils, and well, there's a lot of other ones too, but we'll just look at the lymphocytes and neutrophils. Your neutrophils are the cells that are kind of the first ones on the scene to an infection, and they then talk to other parts of your immune system and can help boost or formulate other responses. But the neutrophils are kind of like the first ones that get to an infection area or irritation area, whatever. The lymphocytes, They come in a little bit later, but they're just as important, and they're important for the whole system of infection fighting that comes in the long term. So the neutrophils and the lymphocytes have to be in ratio. And indices that you can do from a CBC, where you take the number of either the percentage or the overall actual number of the lymphocytes and the neutrophils, and you put it in what's called an NLR ratio, or neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio. And if that's really high, like over 2.2, 2.3, 2.5, 3.0, if you have a lot more neutrophils than lymphocytes, it can mean not good things. And but I want to temper that a little bit. If you go to the doctor and you're sick and you have a really strange NLR, really high or really low NLR, don't be worried yet. Go the next week or something, or 2 weeks later, get your CBC again and run it again. When I'm talking about an abnormal NLR ratio, I'm talking about a consistently abnormal NLR ratio. But what happens is, a lot of times when you have a really high NLR ratio in the CBC, it's oftentimes because when it's chronic, it can be because you have a gut issue, a overgrowth in bacteria. And the reason why that can disrupt the NLR was because it's irritating to your gut, and the neutrophils increase, but also your macrophages, those are a monocyte, they're a type of a white blood cell, they can cause the vitamin D in your gut to be transformed into the active vitamin D, which is called 1,25 dihydroxyvitamin D. And that then will stimulate more macrophage activity. And when there's more macrophage activity, the lymphocytes say, okay, the inflammation, the infection, or whatever is dealt with. We don't have to do our job anymore. So the lymphocyte ratio decreases. So the neutrophils increase, the lymphocytes decrease. And that is why we get this NLR ratio that's off in people with dysbiosis.
Very interesting, very interesting. And I want to go back for a couple of folks who are brand new, I think, in the group here. If you haven't encountered the terms osteoblast and osteoclast, okay, one is a builder, and I think of the osteoblast as the builder and the osteoclast as the cruncher. Okay, that's how I do it in my brain because they're kind of similar words. But so what I hear, just to reiterate that first term, that was very important. If someone has a really low red blood cell count, then they may have too much fat in their marrow. And that fat is toxic to the osteoblasts, the builders. So that would make sense. See, this is the level that we really can take into ourselves and say, okay, so that's the problem. And then the next question is going to be, and why, right? So there's a lot of different places you can go with that, I'm sure.
And a lot of people think, oh, it's because I'm a fat person or something. No, your fat cells number within your bone marrow has nothing to do with your subcutaneous fat. So you can be, obese and have a lot of fat in your bone marrow, or you can be skinny and anorexic and have a lot of fat in your bone marrow. So it doesn't matter. So the reason why a really thin person can get a lot of fat build up in their bone marrow is because of inflammation, and it's your body's way of making sure that you survive. So if there's no food around and you're starving to death, your body says, uh-oh, we got to pack some fat someplace. And where better to pack that energy, because fat is energy, where better to pack it than within your bones, where red blood cells are going to be formed. Well, you want energy there for that red blood cell. There's red blood cells to be able to reproduce themselves. So that's why your body is pretty smart and packs in all that fat right there. So it's there for immediate access.
Yes, nature always has reasons for things, right?
And it does that because it's trying to keep you alive. At that point, when the body is desperate like that, it doesn't really care about the fragility of your bones, the strength of your bones. It just wants to keep you alive. And remember, it has one goal: to keep you alive long enough to have babies. And that's it. We don't care about after that. So that's why it's not short-sighted. And I talk about the body as a mental thinking thing, and it is, but it's because it's trying to desperately keep you alive, and you can procreate, you can have babies even with a broken hip, but you can't if you're dead. So that's the trade-off.
Wow. Okay. Well, and one of the other things that occurs to me is a lot of times when we get these tests back, and most of us probably ask the doctor for a copy of our tests, or nowadays you can log into Quest yourself and get it yourself. So it's getting easier. But it seems like a lot of times when we're looking from a functional medicine perspective, those ranges may be wildly unuseful. So what do you say about the ranges that typically show up for red blood cell count and white blood cell count? Are they in the range correctly, or do you look at it differently?
Well, number one, always when it's indices is off, like red blood cells are too high or too low, or same with white blood cell count, just always repeat it, because these tests are prone to error either from the lab itself. The technician leaves it on the counter for an hour instead of freezing it, or a person's dehydrated, which will really screw up the level of these cells. But always just repeat. That's what you should do. And sometimes 3 times before you really, okay, yeah, this indices is wrong. It's not bad to repeat 2 or 3 times. Most of the levels are pretty good. The what's called the reference ranges are pretty good, but you shouldn't, if it's at the bottom end of the reference range or the top end of the reference range and it's still normal, don't think of it as normal. Keep that in the back of your head and say, well, that red blood cell count, I don't know what's normal, 3.8 or something is the low end of, I can't remember. But if it's a 3.9, 4.0, you really should keep that in the back of your head and say, okay, well, that's probably a problem. You might not be saying I have anemia, but it's saying that there is something going on. So look at those high ends of normals, low ends of normals, and keep them in your head as far as a possible help in figuring out something else. So as I said before, we're going to look at red blood cell count, and we're going to correlate that to thyroid stimulating hormone, or correlate that to how much cortisol you have, or your leptin level, or something like that. But we're going to take and not just look at these indices separately. We're going to look at them separately, but then we're also going to look at them against the span of a whole bunch of other lab tests. It might be either borderline high, borderline low, or really low, really high.
Okay, good to know. Okay, and that's so, folks, when we see that we're on the edge, we might want to get curious.
So I mentioned just now leptin and so I'll just use that as like an example. Okay, so I think one of the most important things we look at in bone health is weight. When a person loses weight fast, that's a problem. And whenever I look at the hundreds of patients I have had and still have, the numbers that are over 50 pounds is a lot less than the ones that I have that are less than 150, less than 130 pounds, you know? So weight matters a lot. And weight doesn't just matter because of the concussive forces that weight provides in stimulating osteoblastic activity, but it has a lot to do with hormones. And one of the hormones that has a lot to do with leptin. And I'm just using this as an example. Leptin is what's called an adipokine. It's like a cytokine that's produced by adipocytes or fat cells. And leptin is produced in your bone and from those fat cells within bone. It's produced by the subcutaneous fat within us, and it's released. It goes to the brain, to the hypothalamus, and it calms down eating. So it decreases our appetite. So if you have a lot of fat in your body, you have more leptin, it should turn off the hypothalamus as far as the action for it telling the brain, hey, you're hungry, you're hungry, you're hungry. So there's two main chemicals in your body, ghrelin from your stomach and leptin from the fat cells, that stimulate the brain to say, okay, you're satisfied, you don't need to eat anymore. The problem with as people get too thin, they have less leptin produced. Well, when the leptin gets really low, the leptin stimulation of the hypothalamus in the brain, so there's what's called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So that you have the brain, the hypothalamus in the brain talks to the pituitary in the brain, which talks to the adrenal glands to produce cortisol and other hormones. There's also a hypothalamus pituitary axis that goes to other organs too. So all these systems, the gonadal system, so the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal. So when the leptin speaks to the brain, it essentially it affects the release of estrogen because of the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. So it's affecting all these axes. And so when you, for example, get a person who's really thin and you say, okay, we're going to give that woman estrogen to improve her bone health, yet her leptin is really low because she's 100 pounds and she's 5'7", and her leptin's really, really low. Well, the leptin and the estrogen receptors sit right beside each other on an osteoblast. So you can give her as much oral estrogen as you want, and it probably won't work to stimulate those osteoblasts because the leptin is not there. And like I said, the leptin and the estrogen receptors sit side by side on an osteoblast. So no matter how much estrogen you give that woman, unless that leptin is there, unless she gains the little weight to produce that leptin, so she's gaining weight, she's going to get more fat cells, she's not going to be able to stimulate those osteoblasts to produce bone.
Wow.
So
wow.
Things like that, you have to put these indices together. You can't just look at that woman and say, oh, her estrogen's low, here, throw some estrogen at her. It doesn't work that way. The same with parathyroid hormone, same thing. A woman who's too low in weight, has a really low leptin level, she might have a really high PTH. So what do? You say, throw in more calcium, throw in more vitamin D, whatever, to try and bring that PTH down. It's not going to happen if they have low leptin. Same thing happens with cortisol. Leptin and cortisol are on a teeter-totter, a balancing act. The same with, and most people know that like DHEA, which is called dehydroepiandrosterone. It's a precursor hormone to estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. That is on a teeter-totter with cortisol. The higher cortisol goes, cortisol is your fight or flight, your stress hormone in the body. the more stress you have in your body, the lower DHEA becomes. And DHEA is your precursor hormone to all these other hormones that are important. You're going to have less testosterone production, less estrogen production, less progesterone production. So you lower your stress, lower the cortisol, DHEA will go up. The same thing happens with leptin and cortisol. If you're stressed out beyond belief and you're skinny, that cortisol is high. That's going to stimulate the osteoclast to break down bone. Your leptin's really low. So you're not going to win the game there. So
you're in a bad place.
Bad place. So that's all I'm saying. You got to look at all these things together. And remember, if you have fat in your bone marrow, you're going to decrease the osteoblasts because you're crowding out the mesenchymal stem cells. You're decreasing the hematopoietic stem cells that produce the red blood cells. That's why we have a low red blood cell count. And now, with all that cortisol from being stressed, you also increase more fat in there. And then, so let's look at that person with that low red blood cell count. Is she really thin? Let's look at her leptin. So that low red blood cell count will then say, okay, we look at something else then, and then we go from there and look at another indice.
Okay, so it's really weird. Like you said, it's complex. It's very complex. And so for those people who maybe are on the thin side, and I know I had a big weight drop that occurred in about a 4-month time frame, and it was substantial, and it alarmed me. And so I'm happy to report that I have regained 8 pounds of that.
And you look at your CTX, your C-telepeptide, that is a bone resorption marker for measuring showing osteoclastic activity. If we would have done your CTX when you had that weight loss, your CTX would have gone up 600, 700. Then you gain the weight, that CTX will come back down because you're now decreasing osteoclastic activity just by that change in weight.
And what the doctor's talking about here are 2 other things that we've talked about previously. One, they're called remodeling bone markers. And one of them is for osteoblasts. What's the activity there? The other is for osteoclasts. The CTX is for the osteoclasts, the breakdown. So yeah, and I'll be interested to do some more. And I think I need to talk to you again to do some more in that realm. But we all have to begin figuring out what's the cause. This is the same thing in really any disease of dis-ease in the body. And I know I see a lot of overlap.
And when you don't do these lab tests, we'll never figure that out. If a doctor just does a bone density on somebody and then say, okay, here's your drug, without doing any of these lab tests, they will never, ever figure out what's going on, why the person has bone loss. And I know all this stuff, and I still a lot of times don't know really why a person has low bone loss, has high bone loss. I mean, a lot of times I do figure it out, but sometimes I don't because it's so complicated. But the worst thing to do is just to get a bone density and not do these lab tests. The lab tests are vital for this whole thing. And a CBC is a $5 test. It's like, oh my God. And this is this treasure trove of information.
Great. Well,
How do you get fat in the bones?
and Vicky's asking again, how do you get too much fat in the bones?
In the bone marrow.
Yeah.
How
Now
does
yeah, and I want to take this into then a segue into the whole diet thing, because one of the questions that I had was, okay, so there's a couple of things that affect the bone marrow that are obviously involved with the diet. So go there for a minute too. And there's one diet that I hear a lot about these days. I kind of wonder how this balances out the brain and the bones. So getting into ketosis requires much more fat in the diet. And yet in the bones, is that causing us a problem? So what do you say?
It is an incredibly complex question.
Oh, good.
I mean, it really is, yeah, it's complex. So I guess to bring it down to the basics, that fat buildup is typically because there's inflammation, this chronic systemic inflammation that unbalances the white blood cells. So some white blood cells are release these cytokines that are pro-inflammatory. Some cytokines are anti-inflammatory. And you need to have a balance of these things. You think, okay, I'm going to get rid of all pro-inflammatory cytokines. No, you don't want to do that. There has to be a balance. Everything in the world has to have balance to it. But when the ones that are pro-inflammatory increase, that is what stimulates. It's like when the hematopoietic stem cells come to a juncture in divergence in the way they form. So, like I said, the hematopoietic stem cells form into red blood cells. Hematopoietic, heme is red blood cell. So it can form into red blood cells. It can form into white blood cells. It can form into different things like that. So, and even the white blood cells themselves, it diverges into which kind of white blood cell. So depending on what cytokines are there will depend on which white blood cells they will form to. So essentially it's a balance in the way the white blood cells, the numbers of white blood cells, the way they form. But any situation where you increase those pro-inflammatory cytokines will cause more of a stimulation to these what's called monocyte macrophage cell line, which then gives you the osteoclasts. So we'll get more of the monocyte macrophages and then more of the osteoclasts, the more of these pro-inflammatory cytokines that we have. And anything can do that. One of the biggest things that can do that is gut issues. So if you have a gut issue, you have an imbalance in bacteria in your gut. You have a population of opportunistic pathogens, and if you have bloating, constipation, diarrhea, halitosis, like a bloating every time you eat something, you feel like your tummy bloats out, you probably have an imbalance of bacteria within your gut. So those are the best signs and symptoms I can tell you that will tell you whether you have a gut issue or not. And if you do, 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So in all likelihood, it's probably a gut issue that's disrupting your immune system.
Okay, does that help, Vicki?
Yes.
Okay, yes, great. And we just discovered there's something not happening right on the big screen. I was able to see you, but nobody else was, except if you're online. So let me see if I can.
Everybody stand up and jump up and down. So
Yeah.
I know.
There we are. There we are.
Okay, that's good.
Yes, yes. So Yaroslav has a question.
Sorry, my name is Yaroslav. I'm a doctor in Russia, actually. Just very quick question. What was the name of the acid that is metabolite of bone fat?
Palmitic.
Palmitic acid. Thank you very much.
Okay.
What about ketosis?
What about ketosis, Vicki?
What about, how does a keto eating program that gets you going into ketosis help osteoporosis? Or what effect does it have on osteoporosis?
Oh my. You shouldn't have asked me that.
I'm sorry.
But I guess there's a lot of people, like for kids that have, I guess, seizures and stuff, they're doing keto diets and things like that. I don't know. I always think of that though as not something you want to do if you have osteoporosis. It's the same game, a similar game as people would say, well, should I do intermittent fasting? I'd say no. I mean, if you are normal weight or a little overweight, sure, do some intermittent fasting. But I swear, 50% of my patients are underweight, and yeah, I encourage them not to do that. And same with keto diets. I think it's probably more acidic in general. I think, yeah, but I'm not an expert on keto, so don't ask me that question.
Well, sometimes, doctor, we have to balance out. We have to decide for ourselves, but having the understanding that, because this was new understanding for me. And yeah, I'd read the section before, but somehow it just, when you're getting ready to really talk about it, it sinks in more. And certainly if you're looking at Alzheimer's and methods of helping people reverse that, then oftentimes having the ability to get into ketosis is useful for the brain. But we also need to balance the brain with the bones. And so maybe that's not the first place that one would go to figure that out for someone who's low weight. That's what it says to me. Candy has a question in the back.
I have a question. You just mentioned, thank you, about mentioning acidic diet like keto is.
Wait. I can't hear you.
Okay, Candy, come on up.
So
Yeah, for those in the back, let's just say if you have a question, let's come on up.
okay. So you mentioned about acidic diet, the keto diet, and Mike, that led me to think about the bone density. If there is a problem in the bones, is there acidic alkaline balance that should also be looked at? That seems to me quite logical. And
Right.
That's really easy to look at, because then you just look at acid alkaline foods and you get out of all the chemistry, which is really hard to understand a lot of times.
Right.
So it is not to make it simple, but a little easier way to look at it, that just go for acidic alkaline as a door entry, as
Right.
one other way. Yes.
I think that's a great way. And yes, so if they've done experiments where they go inside the bone, and just a 0.05 change in pH can effectively make osteoclast's job easier to break down bone. It doesn't take much. So yeah, if you're acidic, and it doesn't just mean, oh, you're eating all acid foods or anything. It's how your body deals with these foods. So that's important. So I do urine pH. I'm not saying that's the end all be all. It's not, probably. I don't use salivary, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who do that. But and I'm sure there's lots of acidic people out there who have great bones. So don't use urine pH as your end all be all. But I do think it's a little bit of a window into what's going on. And the reason why it is a little bit of window is because all during the day, we're breaking down tissues. And when you break down tissues, you're producing hydrogen ions, and hydrogen ions are acidic. So now during the night, we repair all those tissues, and we need to get rid of those hydrogen ions. And the way your body does it, it buffers it through breathing, through release of carbon dioxide, but also through the 4 main alkaline minerals, and that's potassium, calcium, magnesium, and potassium. And around your bones is this what's called a hydration membrane, and that's mostly potassium and sodium. And did I say sodium? So sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium are your 4 alkaline minerals. But around your bones in the hydration membrane is your is mostly potassium and sodium. That's where the active process goes first, to balance, to alkalinize, to buffer those hydrogen ions. So if you don't have that hydrogen membrane of potassium and sodium, if that's not really robust, then the next thing your body does is say, okay, wow, we can't bring down the blood pH, so we better go to the bones and break down the bones for the calcium, magnesium. So that's the job of the parathyroid glands, So there's blood running through them all the time. They're sensing the amount of calcium, they're sensing pH essentially. So if your blood pH gets below 7.3, and that's where your body likes it, 7.3 to 7.4 pH. So anything above 7 is alkaline, anything below 7 is acid. So if it starts getting it down to 7.2, 7.15, your body goes, whoa, this is not good. So the parathyroid glands release parathormone that breaks down the bones to release the calcium. Well, if you would have a good hydration membrane with lots of potassium, that's why you eat lots of veggies with potassium. Sodium, that's why people on a low sodium diet is bad, you know, to a certain extent. Really low sodium is not a good idea. You shouldn't eat a lot of salt, but you know, you need some. But if that membrane with potassium and sodium is good, you're going to be able to buffer those hydrogen ions. You're going to keep your blood pH at 7.3, and everything's happy. Otherwise, like I said, you release that parathormone, which breaks down your bones and to release the calcium. But yes, the pH is, your body pH is really important for that.
Okay, that's an excellent question.
Alkalizing foods.
Alkalizing foods are going to be helpful,
Yeah.
but there's a bunch of other things going on. So you have to actually get the real true measurement using some tool that he's talked about here. There's the urine test, there's the pH test. Yeah, and another thing that we picked up here is, once again, when the gut is not in good order, you have a potential of bone breakdown as well as other disease and issues that go on with that. The gut is where we start, really.
When you have gut bacterial overgrowth, and that's why butyric acid, which is a short chain fatty acid, and it's produced by bacteria in your gut. It's a really important, people, you know, you have to have a lot of fiber, a lot of good bacteria. These things help you keep the acid-base balance within your gut at a certain level. And when your gut, if you don't have these bacteria, you start decreasing things in these short chain fatty acids, and then your pH of your gut increases too much. We don't want, you know, your blood pH can't be too high or too low, and the same with your gut. If your gut pH goes too high, you can't absorb calcium. So just having the right bacteria in your gut will help improve things like increasing the absorption of calcium.
So,
I just bring that up to say that pH it's not just blood pH, it's not just your urine pH is important, it's, you know, it's everything. pH balance is important everywhere.
okay, and there are, of course, some functional tests that we can do with the gut to help us determine a lot of things there.
Yeah, you can. I like stool analysis help. Stool analysis are great. Tell you if you're producing enough enzymes to break down food. It tells you if you're breaking down fat. It can tell you if you have overgrowth of bacteria. So having a stool analysis can be an easy way to do that. And let me just go back real quick to the pH of your urine. It's only the first morning urine that you use. It's if you wake up in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock and go pee, don't worry about it, just go back to bed. But when you wake up at 6:30 or 7 or whenever you wake up and you go to the bathroom, that's the urine you test.
May I also ask a question? It's more going away from the pH and more going into inflammation direction. May I?
Yes, okay. So another question. This is Yaroslav.
Yes. I'm very sorry. I would be very on the side here. So in your book on page 116, you were describing possible causes of symptoms through the body, and one of them was psoriasis. Psoriasis. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. So the psoriasis, I do understand that there is a connection with the inflammation, I presume, but the thing is, are you putting it as one of the main things, or just a part of the accumulative effect? Like, for example, you have psoriasis, you also have this, and all together they're giving the problematic condition you have, or you're putting it more forward?
So
Yeah,
it's,
no,
Go ahead.
no, I don't, it's not, I'm just saying that psoriasis is psoriatic, like psoriatic arthritis, you're going to have bone loss. Psoriasis is just saying there's a preponderance of a certain kind of pro-inflammatory cytokine that will then cause bone loss. So I'm just doing a connection kind of thing, not a real specific.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much.
okay. And if someone has psoriasis, in my experience, I'll just pop up. we're trying to, it's interesting, these, the technology, we're still looking at something from the PowerPoint slides up on the big screen, but I had you here the whole time. I was wondering why everyone was going to sleep. It's like, they couldn't see you. But anyway, not everyone's going to sleep, because, you know, we're here and we're interested in the topic. But essentially, if somebody has a skin condition, the first thought that I get is whatever's going on with the lining of the gut can be reflected on the skin. And so my thought would always be dysbiosis if I saw a skin condition like that.
Yeah, dysbiosis or food sensitivity issues.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like we've got about 10 more minutes that we can have of the doctor's time. And I know that there's probably some more questions. I'm going to ask if either Lois or Deb, who are also online here with us, if either of you has a question, you can certainly pop in here. Looks like Deb's thinking about it. Maybe Lois. Deb, we can't hear you. Let's
So-
you go ahead and unmute yourself, Deb.
Okay.
There we go.
I don't know enough yet to ask a question. I'm certainly signing up for that test, Deb. And I'll bring my friend. But I just want to thank the doctor for this work. I mean, it's amazing that this has been ignored for so long.
I
You
think,
know,
thank you very much. And I think what you should realize too is these tests, like when I talk about that NLR ratio, there's other ratios too that your doctor is not going to make. Your doctor's not going to look at the net neutrophils and look at the lymphocytes and say, hey, we have a problem. He or she's not going to look at the triglycerides and your HDLs and say, oh, this is a problem. So I talk a lot about these different ratios in the book, and I'm not trying to sell the book. I'm just saying that you have to do the legwork a lot of times. And they're not going to do these. Like, for example, that when I just mentioned the triglyceride to HDL ratio, well, a lot of people these days now have what's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And it's when the liver increases in fat, it like gets more than 5% fat within it. And that increases your risk of getting osteoporosis. So you want to be looking at things that you think, how does this have anything to do with my bone health? Well, look at that triglyceride number, look at your HDL number, make that ratio, and then you go, oh, wow, I better ask my doctor if I have fatty liver. And then you go, okay, now the doctor is going to say, well, yeah, it looks like you might have fatty liver, but he or she might not have said that until you asked them to look at that.
That is true.
So now you go, okay, I have fatty liver, and fatty liver is rampant. I mean, a lot of people have fatty liver. And so then you say, well, if I help that fatty liver, I'm going to help my bones. So that's the way you got to start thinking. You got to put the dots in a row. And that's why I know my book is a little complex. I know it's a little bit, out of control, but
I'm starting here.
that is a good way to start. I think
Yeah.
that's a good way to start. Because that gives you kind of like the general drift of things. But then see, I have a problem, and I get excited about this. I mean, this is like, oh my God, I can't get enough of it. So I'm just, I mean, I'm a boring person. I sit here and read about osteoporosis stuff all day long. So, but
Thank you.
I would like to speak also before you hang up, okay?
okay, go for it. Go for
Okay,
it.
my name is Lois. I've
Hi,
been a friend
Lois.
of Deb's for a long time. I'm suffering with breast cancer.
Huh?
So I've been able to get it under control. They removed it. I did 5 bouts of radiation, only because of the protocol with the insurance. And then they put me on, they wanted to put me on this drug called Arimidex.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of research on it. It eats your bones. Well, I already have osteoporosis. So I have been fighting with the doctors for a while now. And they told me, well, let's just give you an infusion, something that starts with a Z.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
Zola-
not happy on that either. I'm not doing that. I don't care what, they could tie me down. It's not happening. So now they've made me, so I have to have a bone density in November 30th. Meanwhile, my husband has had a problem with his heart. He flatlined 3 times last Saturday, and then they put a pacemaker in there. So I haven't had real time for myself, but Deb's been right there with me, helping me through this mess that I'm in myself. Meanwhile, they did a CAT scan because for some reason the protocol always calls for lung and chest CAT scan after you get your radiation. Well, they found a spot or something on my lung, something on my liver. It's called a 10-millimeter lesion. The nodule is very tiny, half the size of your pinky finger in my lung, and something on my T6. I don't know what that is, but some place in the back of your back or something. So now they're making me wait 3 months, and they want to, of course, do another scan. Meanwhile, they really want me on that Z infusion.
you should be on it. Yes. And
Why?
the reason why is because two reasons, 2 really important reasons. Number one, the Arimidex is good. And yes, it does destroy your bones, but the zoledronic acid or the Zometa, so there's zoledronic acid, and it comes in 2 forms, reclass or Zometa. And they're probably pushing, I'm not sure when you say Z, whether it's zoledronic acid or Zometa, but it's probably the more potent zoledronic acid, which is Zometa. And it will not only counteract the effects of the Arimidex, but even more important than that is it slows down your bone remodeling so much that, which is fine to do in the short term. It's not fine to do in the long term, but it is fine to do in the short term. It slows down that bone remodeling so much that when you get a cancer cell that lands on your bone, it can't fulminate, it can't grow if that bone is essentially calm and quiet. And that's what the Zometa will do for you. So I highly recommend that you do it. It really, it will help preserve your bone density, and it will decrease the risk of metastasis of that breast cancer.
Now, I'm not taking the Arimidex.
Okay.
I asked for tamoxifen.
Yeah.
So I am taking tamoxifen for probably about 5 or 6 weeks now, okay? Because the radiation was done in end of August, and then they did this. So because I'm taking tamoxifen, that helps build your bones.
Right, it does.
So do I still, oh, I hope not, have to take that infusion? Why? If I'm not doing the Arimidex.
Because like I said, it does 2 things. It does counteract the Arimidex, but it also helps decrease the metastasis.
Can't I do something natural? Isn't there anything natural I can
I
do?
am as natural as they get. You know, I am all for doing things quote naturally, but I am also here to win the game. And winning the game is doing all the nutrition and all the exercise and all the drugs if we have to, just so we don't hurt you at the same time. And when you do the zoledronic acid for a short term, not long term, because then the
How
longer,
long term, how short term? What
well,
do you think?
that's a different situation with you than with somebody else. And the reason
Every
why,
6 months they want to do it.
yeah,
They want to do it in November, they want to do it in June. They want to do it in November, they want to do it in June.
I know. And after
2025.
about 2 or 3 years of doing that, then you do have a huge risk of osteonecrosis of the jaw. Short term, you don't. Short term, you don't.
So what's short term?
2 years.
So that's why they said from now, this November to 2025 November, that's what they're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I can't believe it, but okay. So
Sorry.
I'm gonna then,
I'm
so I
sorry.
shouldn't cancel my bone density test November 30th then, right?
No, take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
What if it's gotten better? What if it's gotten better?
He expects it to get better, don't you, doctor?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but I mean better than 2 years ago. What if it got better? Does that mean I still have to take that
Well,
infusion?
yes.
Lois, I see you want to really explore this, and one of the things that is true, and I know, Doctor, you've talked about this, that we're all different, and each case is different. So you can get some upsides in a short time like this, and have some broad things to say. But I think when you're looking at taking someone off of a drug, there are probably some things in the protocol that you would recommend. So this would be another case where, Lois, I would say, if I were you, I'd get an appointment with him and really dive in, because you really have great questions and you want to know, and you know a lot, but you need to know a lot more before you can make the best decision. So I really appreciate the question, though, because this shows the brilliance that the doctor has. He knows. And
Ay, ay, ay.
I know, yeah.
I know.
Osteoporosis all day long.
Yeah, that's what Vicky says, is because you read about osteoporosis all day long, doc. So anyway, I want to just see if there's one last question, and then we need to move on and allow the doctor to have a little bit of a Saturday afternoon. So is there anything else from the group back here?
And no questions about keto diets, okay?
We already sort of covered that.
I have a question.
Okay, Dee has a question.
What about trauma? Like if, and I know this is off all the red blood cells, and this may come up later. So if Deb doesn't want to really address that right now, I get it. But I've experienced just my left side where it seems like I only fall on my left side, and that's where the osteopenia is. It's gone from osteoporosis to osteopenia. What is that
Yay.
all about?
That's so cool.
Hooray for good starts.
Yeah,
because
oh,
you're
yeah.
moving in the right
Yeah,
direction.
absolutely.
So your question is really, why does it?
Yeah, how does trauma, because it seems like it's the neck and
falling.
the hip. And that's where the osteopenia is. It seems it's on that side that I fall. Or have fallen.
I don't know, but I'll take a stab kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird.
There could be several factors, actually. I'm going to get into, this is a little bit of a
Jump.
big can of worms here, okay? But I'm going to get into vasculature and neurology, okay?
Okay.
So your blood vessels and your nerves have a lot to do with bone building.
Okay.
For example, and gets really complicated. It's so complex, I really haven't even talked about it in the book because it would have been 200 more pages. But you have what's called an endothelial glycocalyx. And that's within your blood vessels, in all your capillaries. On the inside of the capillaries, there are little projections of glucose molecules called the glycocalyx, glyco meaning glucose.
Okay.
And it determines the health of those glucose molecules, glycosaminoglycans, glycolipids, glycoproteins. They determine the ability for those capillaries to function properly. So if you have poor blood flow, you're going to have poor endothelial function. And with the little projections between osteocytes, also they're called dendrites. So the osteocytes are a kind of bone cell that governs osteoblastic and osteoclastic activity. Those dendrites also have a glycocalyx within there. So the projections on how the osteocytes talk to each other goes through these tunnels that have the little glucose molecules in them. If those glucose molecules aren't proper, aren't healthy, then the osteocytes can't talk to each other either. So if you have on one side of your body a lack of good musculature, a lack of good neurology, a lack of good blood flow, you're going to affect bone density, and you're going to affect the ability of your muscles to contract and be strong and be really quick and reactive to something. So you might fall more to that side because these nerves or the blood vessels aren't working well, and then the muscles don't work as well. But I may go a little further. So I don't know if people have had bone densities where they look at your right hip and your left hip, and one hip has a worse score than the other. That can be because of lack of nerve flow or blood vessel flow, blood flow to that hip. It can decrease the ability for the osteoblasts to form bone. Blood vessel flow, blood flow to the bones because of that glycocalyx, it actually makes specific capillaries. They're called H capillaries, and those H capillaries, if that glycocalyx isn't healthy, you don't get the number of H capillaries formations that you need, and then those H capillaries, they're like magnets to osteoblasts. So then you won't get the osteoblastic activity. So having good glycocalyx endothelial and osteocyte glycocalyx formation and health is important. Well, what's a really good test to look at that? We're going to go back to therapeutic targets, okay? Well, C-reactive protein is a really easy test to get. You have high C-reactive protein, you might not have as good of vasculature as you should have. A red blood cell count. If hypoxia, if you don't have good red blood cell count, you're not going to have good oxygenation to your muscles, to your nerves, to everything. There's this really cool test called ADMA, or asymmetric dimethylarginine. And it's a super test to get for preclinical atherosclerosis. Whoa, really?
Oh,
Oh, okay. So you get a test to say whether you are on your road to atherosclerosis, not just cholesterol, not just HDL and LDL cholesterol, but this other test allows you, almost even before that, to see whether you're a candidate for that. And then there's certain things you can do to improve. And that's what we're doing here. When we find therapeutic targets, then we figure out ways to fix that therapeutic target, to make that therapeutic target better. And now we're going to positively affect your bones. So ADMA is a really cool test that I now use for preclinical atherosclerosis. And I would say if you're always falling on that side, maybe that would be a good thing to do.
Well, doctor, I'm gonna say thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you
thank you from
so
all of us,
much.
because that's a perfect wrap, matching it back into the blood counts and the types of issues that we're looking at here for therapeutic targets.
Yes, thank you.
So let's give the doctor a hand. Yay! Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, and so we will let you go, and the rest of the time here, we're going to be looking at some food-oriented things. So you folks online can stay. In fact, Doc, if you want to stay and see what we're talking about for food, we've got 4 things today, including papaya, fresh off of our trees.
Wow, really?
Yes. Oh, it's so good. It's like ambrosia.
We
I wish
have
you were here.
we have pawpaws here.
Yeah. What's that?
Pawpaw trees.
Yeah.
Pawpaw tree is pawpaw pie is dessert is so great, but we have pawpaw trees here.
Well, every place has something glorious, and that's the way it is in this world.
No, I'm heading out for a run right now, so I'll say bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye, Doc.
Take care. Thank
Have a
you.
nice one.
Thanks
Bye.
very much. I'll
Bye-bye.
be doing
Bye.
it.
Isn't that the place where we can see them?
Okay, there he goes. Okay, so let's see if I can change the view here and put everybody
Double click on your image.
on my image. Oh, that's simple enough. There we go. There we are. Okay. So thank you, guys. You can stay on board with us. We're going to, I need to put some things up on the big screen here. So excuse us for a second. If I can get that to work, that would be nice. Sharing the screen. There we go. So we are sharing the screen. There we go. Okay.
You got it, Deb.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so here we go. Today's bone nourishing menu. Took this,
Switch on the big
it didn't switch on the big screen still.
because they're separate. They're separate.
I wonder why.
That's the question.
Okay. Well, there's something we can play with later, I guess.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah, I know you guys online can see it. It's the people at the back of the room here that can't see it. And it's very strange. We don't know why this
Just
is.
do double.
Can you X out that one and then shove that
No,
one?
no, no. She already does it double at the same time. She needs to switch to that screen and switch the slide. over.
Okay,
So she
so let
has
me
to do
try
double.
something else. So if I go down with this
Yes.
and I look someplace else. Let's try that. Ah!
Yeah,
Voila!
like I said, you have to do the double work, switching it by.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still getting used to how these things work, but at least the recording, you guys can get the recording. You can see all of it later. So my apologies there. Okay, so Vicky's, yeah. So we've got kefir. I'm gonna do some show and tell here.
Yeah, let me get wait here.
Do you need help?
Nah, I'll just say, let's see, this should be in the camera someplace. No, not in the camera now. Okay, never mind. For the group here, I'm going to show you, this is homemade kefir. And there's some interesting things I'm going to share with you in just a moment about homemade kefir. This has blueberries in it, and it's made with goat. You can do coconut kefir, you can do different kinds of kefir. This happens to be the favorite one for Dr. McCormick because of the amount of protein that's in it.
I can vote for the taste.
Vote for the taste, that's right. And this is kombucha. Now this says it comes from Flying Eagle. We're actually just reusing this. This is Dr. David's home brew. Anyone who wants to brew this in their own home, just ask. We constantly have more of the culture. We can give it away to you, give you the recipe. Get your, get your black tea and some organic sugar and your culture and you're set. Okay, so this is also a fermented drink. Both of these are fermented. So lots of enzymes in here, for example.
Kefir you can make with alternative milks besides the.
You absolutely can make it. And so everyone has different dietary concerns, and that's definitely understandable. What the doctor likes about this one is protein. Now, for those of you who haven't done a lot of deep dive into this, and I was certainly among the people that was not making enough protein a day. I wasn't getting enough in. So you need about 60 or 70 milligrams of protein a day. And if you're only getting about 30 or 40, you got a problem. So if you're vegan, you guys have some ways to solve that. Most people might not know that if they're just vegetarian.
That's probably the most important thing. The amount of protein.
Good, yeah. And that's critical for your bones
Yeah.
and your brain and everything else. So, yeah, my husband likes to say oftentimes, you know, people who go vegan really need to study because, hey, chocolate cake is vegan or candy.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if you're eating the wrong thing, thinking you're doing well, then that lack of education is going to hurt
I
you.
already tried this.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's elastin and a whole bunch of things that you have to really pay attention to. Okay, so let me go down to the next slide here.
Well,
And-
also the importance of the kefir is the amount of probiotics.
Yeah.
Okay, the good bacteria, it replenishes your bacteria in your gut. The homemade goat kefir has more than 60 different strains of bacteria, good bacteria.
Yeah, one of the problems, you know, we talked about dysbiosis, and if your gut's unhappy and it's not well balanced, then it's going to affect even your bones and everything else. But you will have different kinds of bacteria that grow in different types of mediums. That's all that we're saying here.
Especially recommended after antibiotic.
After antibiotics, yeah. So kefir is a rich source of nutrients that support bone health, such as calcium. It also contains vitamin K2, which plays a crucial role in calcium metabolism and helps protect against bone fractures. Adequate calcium intake is essential for maintaining bone density, which naturally declines with age. You know, getting old is not for the weak or the lazy. It just isn't.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, enzymes and probiotics.
Does the bones get the switching slides or not?
Yes, I can see that they're getting it. Except it's at a different place. Okay. Okay, so still some things that don't quite make sense. The next slide here, let's see if I have to do something over here. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? Okay, but they were on different slides. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to stick with what you guys can see here right now. So we've got the enzymes and probiotics with papaya and kombucha. So papaya, it's papain enzyme rich. So one of the things that's interesting about papaya and pineapple with bromelain are the enzymes can be used two different ways. They can be used for pain relief when they're eaten alone, or if you're eating them with something, now they're a digestive enzyme. Pretty cool, huh? So if you have a little extra pain someday and you've got a backyard, you've got these trees, hey, have at it. We've got about 40 of these really big guys coming. We're going to have more than I know what to do. Kombucha contains potassium, magnesium, phosphorus, copper, and manganese. Probiotic gut balancing refreshment. It's acidic though, so best limit to like 4 to 6 ounces. When on a cool day or a hot day and you're hot, you've been out there moving boxes or something or doing yard work, it's kind of compelling to perhaps want to eat a lot or drink a lot of it. But on an average basis, you wouldn't want to do probably too much on a day. Okay. Okay, Vicky's pumpkin cake.
And it's
So
here, samples.
yes, so Vicky, do you want to hand out some pumpkin, or I'll hand it out when you talk? How about that?
Okay. If I can talk. And you went down the wrong pipe. The goat keeper. No, I'm not that fond of goat keeper, okay? But I was raised on goat keeper, and I am very healthy. I take it as medicine. That's when I give it to my dogs too, and they're healthy. So Okay, well, the first thing in the pumpkin bread is the pumpkin, okay? Rich in minerals, abundant in antioxidants, okay, to fight free radicals. The seeds are high in the omega-3s, and women who have a high level of omega-3s, okay, are not prone to hip fractures. So I found that very, very interesting. You can have salmon, okay, or you could take a good fish oil, and we have them here. But you should take high in omega-3s. That helps avoid the hip fractures. All right, now let's see, pumpkin. All right, everything is minerals for the bones. Look, even coconut, high in magnesium, helps maintain bone strength and slows down the bone loss. It's also very high in calcium. When you have that calcium and magnesium mixture, that's what's helping your bones. Coconut for bone strength. Now, coconut, you can drink coconut water, okay? That helps build the bones as well. You know, coconut water is delicious. It's got a lot of calcium in it, and it also reduces inflammation. So I have coconut milk in there, in the icing, and coconut milk in the cake. What else do I have in there?
Vicky, please remind the patients about laxative effect of the coconut water. Yes.
Lactose?
No, lactic effect.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Laxative effect, sorry.
One quick note first. We're gonna give plates because you're gonna get papaya too. All right, so we're putting the plates out there and around and preceding with plates and napkins, and I'm following. Go ahead, Vicki, sorry.
Okay. Too much coconut water, are we saying, it can get your bowels going? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
okay,
Because
okay.
as any medicine, too much you can
Yeah,
give side effects.
but you know, I even like with the kombucha, like 8 ounces a day is good. 8 ounces of coconut water is good. You know, everything's in moderation. If you're gonna go, you know, off the deep end with this stuff, you know, then you're gonna have, you know, side effects. All right, raisins, all right, again, mineral rich, all the minerals, and also vitamin D. It's rich in calcium, magnesium, and it helps, again, with your bone density and your strengthening. Boron helps the body restore the calcium and the magnesium, and there's boron in the raisins. So it's that's an osteoporosis cake, okay? I put in there everything. I even put chocolate chips in there because they're high, chocolate's high in magnesium. It's gluten-free, wheat-free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So I thought about what am I gonna put? I've got another recipe here. Is the recipe in your book? Yes, okay, but there's an update, okay? The update is, this was a quick recipe from King Arthur Bagel Company. Okay, they put out the mix, and this book is for the white or the yellow cake mix. Well, they now have a pumpkin mix, pumpkin cake mix, or pumpkin bread mix. I use that, and of course, I alter it. I added coconut milk, I added coconut oil. You know, I put the chocolate chips and the raisins and the nuts in there. So it's on page 239. And this is Dr. David and I wrote this book.
By the way, this makes a great Christmas gift or holiday.
excellent idea.
Yes,
Seriously,
yeah.
yeah, it's got the information about the goodness of the things, the ingredients you're putting into everything, and then there's some naughty ones too.
Right, yes, you gotta please everybody.
That's right.
Yeah, the
I love it.
beginning of each recipe tells you all about what the foods are in there and what they're good for. Like here's zucchini rounds. I can tell you zucchini is very good for the digestive system. If you have any kind of problems with digestive issues, put some zucchini in your smoothie every morning, or eat lots of squashes and zucchini. It's very good for the digestive system. So enjoy the cake.
one more thing. Vicky said that coconut contains a lot of magnesium and calcium. Don't forget, it also not it's also important for your bones, but mostly it was also important for your heart, because though magnesium and calcium are essential elements to muscles to work. Our cardiac muscles are more sustainable to decrease these elements in your body. So yes.
Food is medicine, people. Food is medicine. You know, for years, 100 years ago, they didn't have the drugs that they have today. And, you know, we got by, okay? You know, there were less diseases. So, any questions on this?
Okay, it looks like Lois is still with us.
Vicky, I do have a question to you.
Yeah.
Which would you more recommend? A young coconut with soft jelly, or a more elderly, I would say, coconut?
Well, if you want to drink the coconut milk, you want the young one, okay? Because that's when the milk is the sweetest. If you want to eat the coconut itself, it's when it's already brown and the coconut milk is kind of watery. But, you know, there are places in the South Pacific and the Philippines and all, where they live on coconut. Their rate of cancer is like this much. It's very, very healthy for you. And it's also thermogenic coconut. It goes in, okay, and it's out in about 4 hours, and it gives you energy.
They also pollute, but that's a whole nother.
A what?
Pollute,
Pollute?
pollute.
Balut. What, it's in balut? What is balut?
It's the fermented duck eggs.
Fermented duck eggs.
Oh my gosh,
Right,
yes.
okay. Some next time, we would love to try it.
Oh, sounds yummy.
Is it the ones that's black, or is ones that's like conservated?
Black or,
Is it the ones that's black one.
Little duck.
Yes, I tried that one. It was.
oh, okay. Okay, so thanks, Vicky, for that. And I think everyone is just about ready to go dive into the papaya. And rather than trying to bring that around, I've got some forks out and you've got plates, so you can come get those. As soon as we're done here, just about, Candy, around 3:30, 3:40. Candy, stand up. This is Candy. There's Candy.
Sitting on the floor.
Candy is a yoga teacher and much more, much more. She's been doing some bone healing exercises with me for a while. I've been doing these. And between that and some of the dietary changes I've made and some of the hormonal work that I'm doing, I do feel better. I really do. And when I would get up from being down on the floor, I'd have to get myself back up because I could feel that it just wasn't, my back was not as solid as it needed to be. My skeletal structure was creaky kind of like, but it's so much better now. And I'm also on the osteo minerals that the doctor has. He has a small store with about 6 items. And I'm on 2 of his products. One is a collagen product and the other is a minerals product. So those, I think these things that I'm doing are going to be helpful for me long term. But you know, what I did 15 years ago didn't work the second time. So the body changes, circumstance changes, your gut and how you take your food in and how your digestive abilities and everything changes. So we have to stay vigilant and curious and look for answers. So I really appreciate the fact that Candy's here. This is a love donation, so you can stay. It's about a 30-minute class and see what it is that she brings for the awareness that you can have to begin working with your bones and telling them, hey, we need you, encouraging the osteoblast activity. So that's that one. In chapter 8, we're going to do a glorious, hopefully finish into the realm of the rest of the therapeutic targets. And I'm going to need some medical help on that. Dr. Yaroslav will probably assist with some of that because there's a lot of depth in the CMP, the complete metabolic panel.
Yes, indeed.
A lot of data there. We'll try to make that human understandable what I liked is that the doctor, you know, when you have a really good grasp of your material, you can tie all the pieces together. You can say, like he did, did you see how happy he was to be able to bring it back home with the blood tests? Because we went off there. But you can see that even a question as far flung as someone with cancer comes right back into the bones and her concern about what's going on there and drugs. And then ultimately you can do some more measurements to determine what's going on, that you can be directed to do this, that, or the other. So I was really happy with that too. And so thank you. And would you like some papaya and some kombucha?
Oh, Mr. Just one question.
Why? That was you have to pick up some pie. What about them? I'm a couple pieces. Oh, because I'm very good. I like standard. Yeah, it was interesting. Very good for you. Informative. These are things that I'm going to be talking to my doctor about. Yeah, in general, right? Yeah, I think what they said, I think he's checked out. Yes. Kind of. I was surprised Okay, all right. You have a good rest of the weekend. Yes. I'm sure I'll talk to you before. Yeah. Learning. Yeah.
How was the lecture on Dr. McCormick? For me, I grasp all the details because I'm Dr. Like for example, as I said, clinical step. The pet hormone. I was studying it back in biochemistry class, like on my third year of education. And back then, if you don't understand something, you would forget about it. And I totally forgot about this connection. I totally forgot about it.
What I like is book. He will bring in.
Yes, indeed. There's some connected, but it's just boring to say it. I would prefer to say it all of it together is at the end of the day is in our body what goes in stays in. Yes, it is. Why he is when he was describing about the acids that is produced by the fat, I was actually thinking that it stays in mitochondria after the metabolism and doesn't go outside. Now that he said that palmitic acid goes outside and actually can influence. Now actually about this because if it actually does go outside, it means it will be changing the pH. And yes, I have to pay attention to more other metabolism can actually have if and after that, if it influences the pH, it also influences not only osteoclast or osteoblasts, but also other metabolites and other functions. It's chemistry and I love it. I love it. Do you prefer more detailed material like that, or more simplified in human life?
Probably more simplified. I'm an engineer. So I think, how do you connect A and C?
Yes.
Yeah, but also, parts is bad. Engineering. The problem. Why did that happen? And how can I keep from happening?
Because of the steps. Yes, and it understood. I do prefer, do what you prefer, materials like chocolate, or more slow but still detailed material. I like you want more details compressed into the one thing, or you want it more spread like butter, but to be able to absorb it.
That's a good question.
Yes. Because I would be considered as a dev is about the content. So far, I'm just controlling the content.
For instance, in his book, all the testing. That's when there was the left after a while. You like science.
Yes, and me personally, I prefer everything compressed to one thing. But I have a special, that's why I take it that way. But for you guys, you don't have the special education in this matter. It's because this lab is preparing this material. She said, I prefer when it's everything spread where like a butter. That's why I was. So far, so good. Also, thank you very much. I will leave it to you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
So, yeah, it's a lot, but I can do it. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So.
I'm trying to be, I had breakfast and now I have a start lunch so that if he's down and goes backwards, do you know what when it goes backwards? Can I look at the ice cream? Yeah. I'm trying. I'm finding. I know. I mean, I'm doing moderate. Basically, very small portions, but. I know it's getting micro elements, etc. But at the same time, I do lose weight if I'm going like keto, then relaxation, keto, then relaxation. And I'm still experimenting. I did because I remember the thing is, I'm still experimenting with myself because if I will know how I will lose weight, I will not. Yes. Like for example, when you are eating hard boiled or soft boiled, I found out there is a huge difference. So I was doing soft boiled egg.
You like that?
Just
That backyard. Trees, isn't it great?
But just no, please, mayonnaise. I was yes. I was thinking that so will active have enough. But inside yes, it gives a toll on your body, so you have to do the part. I'm trying to grasp how much time you should spend on it and come back to the yes. Depending on the
It's called stress.
Sometimes we are just waiting because I'm there know about other history recording. History recording. We need to tell them to but also I have figured out 3 types of hunger, and at least I do have empty stomach, low sugar, and psychological. Yes.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yes, and if one of those would trigger, it would. You know why I still do it in my studies bread, even though it's the carb? Because it eliminates the empty stomach of hunger. No.
The little Sagittarian.
Secondly, because it stimulates the histamine and function of the stomach. So that's because I
Yes, we
worked
are.
out today. That's not
Yes.
for me. See, that's what I understand.
For you, and by my daughter. Cute girls, they're cute. Oh, cool. Oh, yes, you too. And all that.
Well, Lois, we're gonna let you go here. Looks like we're pretty done. Thanks for joining us. You had a
Yeah.
great question.
Thank you so much, Deb. That was so appreciative and information for me. I will definitely try to get in touch with him. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I'll give you his contact information.
I'm just wondering, I'm gonna go for my bone density like I'm supposed to, okay? And